As many of you, I hope, know by this point in time, since right towards the beginning of the pandemic, I started doing a book study, so providing thoughts and questions for the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, specifically the first book in that series, The Magician's Nephew. And I started this before being here at St. Michael's, but I've continued this trend. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, you can find some of these listed in the Christian formation portion of our website, or just check your email and you'll see plenty of information on that. And as we're getting to the end of that book, I was thinking a lot about it in light of our readings this Sunday. And just to give a summation, if you haven't read the book or if it's been a while since you've read it, basically what happens in The Magician's Nephew is that the nephew, Diggory, is forced by his uncle, the magician, to take these rings and travel to different worlds. And one of these worlds ends up being the world of Narnia. But before Diggory gets there, he ends up releasing, even though he's told he shouldn't do it, even though he's told not to, he ends up releasing Jadis, who later becomes the White Witch. And he releases her and she follows them to the land of Narnia. This is right after this whole world has been created. So Diggory has inadvertently, through a massive mistake of his, released the first evil into this newly created world. And Aslan, who is the stand-in figure for God and more specifically for Jesus, looks at Diggory and gives him a task to redeem himself, gives him a task for penance. And it's to go and find this apple and to bring this apple back. And what will happen is that through the tree that is planted from this apple, this tree will be able to prevent Jadis, the White Witch, from returning to Narnia as long as this tree still stands. So Diggory goes out. He has a few of his friends with him. And he goes out to find this apple. And Jadis happens to already be there. And she tries to tempt him. She tries to tempt him away from his task. The first thing that she does is tempt him himself. So the apple from this tree, it turns out, can grant immortality to any who eat of it. So Jadis tempts Diggory with that gift of immortality. And when that doesn't work, she tries something else. Diggory's mother has been ill for the entire book, and he's been worried about her, and he's been trying to find a way to possibly save her. And so the witch offers this to him, that he should forget the task that Aslan has given him, and he should instead give the apple to his mother. What she's trying to do is to get Diggory off the task that he has been given, off of fulfilling the will of Aslan, and instead to focus on himself, his own wants and needs. She's trying to get him to focus on his ego, as we would say. But fortunately, Diggory doesn't. He does remain on task, and part of that is because he sees what Jadis is trying to get him to do. He sees that she's being nasty even to his friends and trying to convince him to do what she wants him to do. And so he realizes she doesn't actually have his best interest at heart. And so Diggory goes back and gives the apple to Aslan. And Aslan congratulates him on a job well done. And after the tree from this apple has grown and has given fruit and its own apples, Aslan says to Diggory, take one of these apples back to your mother, because this will, in fact, help heal her and make her whole. It may seem weird or strange that Aslan cares for Diggory's mother in this way, that he's willing to give Diggory this gift, especially after this task was one of penance for Diggory. But the thing is that Aslan cares very deeply about Diggory's mother. Earlier, when Diggory explains what's going on with her, Aslan too starts to shed a tear. Aslan cares very much about her plight, just as God cares very much about our sorrows as well. And what we see in this entire story, what we see in the magician's nephew, what's really going on helps explain to us what we see at the very beginning of our reading from Romans this morning. At the start of Romans 12, we get one of the most important and fundamental ways that we are called to be Christians in this world. Paul tells us that we are called to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. We are called to give ourselves, our entire selves, our entire lives to God, to be used to fulfill God's will in this world. We are called to put aside everything else, our own wants and needs, our own ego even, in order to follow the Lord. And that's exactly what we see with Diggory in this story from the magician's nephew. It's what Aslan called Diggory to do, and it's what we are called to do as well. Now, we also must remember that giving our lives to God doesn't mean we forsake the things that truly matter. As we saw with Diggory and Aslan, when we mourn the loss and pain of others, and even the loss and pain of ourselves, God is there with us, mourning with us. God is there to offer what we need in those moments, too, just as Aslan did with Diggory. The thing is, we just don't always know what it is that we or others do need. And we don't always know when exactly it is that God will fulfill those needs for us either. We also can't forget that our journey in making our lives a living sacrifice to God, that journey for us will look very different than it does for others. Diggory's path in The Magician's Nephew, Diggory's path is not the same as that of his friends. It's not even the same as those who follow the same path of following Aslan throughout the Chronicles of Narnia series. This also gets us back to what Paul says, because Paul tells us that each and every one of us have specific gifts. We have different gifts which we have to offer in service to the Lord. So when you're giving your life to God, don't worry about what others have to do. Just worry about what you have to do. The message here is that Diggory ultimately had to put aside his own wants and needs to serve Aslan in the story. We too are called to put aside our own wants and needs and give every bit of ourselves and our lives in service to God. That's all we can ever hope, want, or ask for. So the question we need to ask ourselves, as we see Diggory able to put himself aside in service to God, is will we be able to do the same in our spiritual journey?